We'll just wait until 1:30. You can go if you want. Well, we can't have it fast because then we won't be on for good.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's Cobb County Board of Commissioners work session, this Tuesday, July 28th of 2026. Today we have 3 presentations before the Board of Commissioners. The first is to provide an update on the American Rescue Plan Act. The second is to have information and updates regarding housing in Cobb County. And finally, to receive information regarding data centers. For our first presentation, we have Bill Volkman, our Deputy County Manager, and I will turn things over to him for this presentation.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairwoman, Commissioners, County Manager. We are going to give you an ARPA update. We are getting close to the final closeout, which is September 30th, and I just want to share with you some of the progress that has been made through the ARPA program to date, as well as kind of what our next steps are as we move to the final closeout. So with that, we're going to touch on the ARPA award, the original award, but also the additional revenues that this generated and the total allocation that has been made to date. We're going to also touch on key performance indicators, the number of participants who have been touched by the ARPA program to date, and then the ARPA spend, and then finally, we're going to close out on the ARPA watch list. Any projects that were kind of falling a little behind the spend program, and kind of talk to you about what that may look like, and then hit on the final summary and then open it up for any Q&A. So with that, the county received $147 million of ARPA direct award, and we went through a extensive community involved process to determine how that would be allocated out. But in addition to the original grant award, this program has earned $19.6 million of interest to date that has also been used to allocate out to programs for this ARPA project. The only difference is those ARPA interest dollars do not have the restrictions, even though the board has allowed us to invest in county infrastructure and capital projects, as well to give to additional subrecipient awards to meet that need in the community. So to date, we've allocated out $167.3 million. And just, this is going to jog some memories, but we went back to the original pillars that we used to allocate this funding out. And we focused on community health, support services, economic development, county infrastructure, and public safety. And we've allocated that $160+ million out to over 99 projects. And again, focusing on those key areas. And if you remember when we did this back, I think the original allocation, you really had one specific agenda item came forward for those pillars, and we identified all the subrecipients within those pillars that we were serving. Some of the key performance indicators that we've hit on as we move through these programs, even though we talked about those pillars, we wanted to break them down into some of these larger buckets. So food, housing, and shelter, we've touched over 819,000 individuals through those programs. Public health, 224,000. Education and careers, 34,000. Safety and legal, 28,000. Transportation and infrastructure, 9,000, and then other 840. So overall, this program has touched over $1.1 million of participants. So that's pretty big impact over the last few years. And we'll continue to update these as we get through the final closeout. We'll bring back the final list of the impacts that we received. And yes, I think just to let you know, this is not individuals. So if an individual received, food and housing, it didn't mean they couldn't be eligible for public health. So this is individually how these programs are broken down. Over $1.1 million of participants who have received some sort of funding or benefit. So for example, Chairwoman, I see kind of how that's formulating. So for example, somebody could have received food assistance program, but then they could have also received a rental assistance program. So they could have been in the pipeline for a variety of programs. But each program, we wanted to count the participants that were served under those various buckets. Does that make sense?
Yes, so the number on the right indicates individuals that receive service.
That is correct.
Under that category. Okay.
And I do want to pause here because I think this is a very important stat of over 1.1 individual per people who have received some sort of assistance through these various programs, and just want to see if there's any questions from the board before I move off of this slide. Yes,
Okay.
Commissioner?
But in there, even if they received food and then they received housing, they were still counted once for each.
Yes, that is correct. Any other questions? Okay, very good. All right, so this is going to get into more of the spend. So we just want to share with you of the $160+ million that we have allocated to date. $123 million has been spent to date. 47 programs have been 100% exhausted. And that this is important as we're getting close to that September 30th deadline. We have 31 programs out there that are between 90 and 99% spent. And then as we move down 80 to 89% spent, we have 11 programs, and we have 10 programs that are below 80% spent. And we're going to show you the breakdown of those programs. And that is going to be really our area of focus over the next month or two, to kind of walk through the plans and strategies to really talk about how we get to that full spend. And for any programs that we can't get to that full spend, we've been working with our partners in Deloitte, as well as any program who has received 100% spend. If there's any dollars that can be reallocated to them for a quick one-time purchase or to meet the original program criteria that they identified, we would go ahead and bring those forward as well. And we have been doing that throughout the process, so this hasn't been a last-minute knee-jerk reaction to say, hey, this is kind of where we are. And Deloitte, and through our partners in Deloitte, they've had monthly or if not weekly check-ins with some of the programs on this list, just to make sure we can clearly identify how they're going to meet that mark. Any questions on the spend before we get into the 10 programs? Very good. Okay, so these are in spend percentage order, but I just kind of want to walk through these, and then we're going to spend some time talking about some of the key themes here. As you kind of walk down this list, you're going to see Cobb Douglas Board of Health on here several times. We now have a weekly or a biweekly meeting with them, and we are working through the final spend for each of these programs. So we do anticipate they will hit their mark, and we are working through that strategy with our partners at Deloitte. But as we kind of walk down this list, we have some large capital purchases. I'm going to go to Habitat for Humanity. That is a already approved project, and they are going to go through the build process. So they are looking some large capital purchases for housing. So that is in the works, and we feel confident that they're going to move forward. We had a little bit of delay with some zoning and questions as we move through that, because it is a mixed development of Habitat homes versus a developer is building some traditional homes in there as well. So we're working through that process, but that project is moving full steam ahead. And I know we have the economic strategic plan up there. That was one that was kind of late to the party on our part, but that is moving full steam ahead. They're at 70% spend, so we anticipate a few more invoices coming in and no issues anticipated there as well. Rental assistance continues to be a need. Again, Center for Family Resources is our number 2 from the top. That continues to spend down as we continue to see that need throughout our community. Okay. This last part is our kinds of rounds out our top 10. And again, you're going to see Cobb Douglas Public Health in here several times. The one that we do want to draw your attention to is the South Cobb Health Complex. So what we are going to do is begin walking the halls with each of the commissioners to talk about our strategy. We have met, like I said, routinely with Cobb Douglas Board Public Health. There were some delays in federal funding, and then we have brought all the contracts forward to the board for consideration. We're working towards the GMP, working with our facilities folks. We don't anticipate much of the ARPA spend taking place, but one of the things that we want to look at is how we shift dollars around, because as we said, the interest dollars that we have previously allocated are unrestricted and do not have that time frame of September 30th. And we have used those for existing capital infrastructure projects. So we may need to look at how we shift those dollars around to better utilize those and still meet the funding need. Cobb Douglas Board of Health is also doing the exact same thing that we're doing. They're looking to see how they can contribute to this project in addition to the ARPA dollars, because they know the time frame as we walk through that. So the all-in spend for that project that we have on the books for ARPA is $9.7 million. South Cobb Health Complex has about $8.5 million left on their ARPA bucket list. And between the county and the Cobb Douglas Board of Health, we do anticipate covering that with Board of Health dollars as well as interest dollars, and not asking the board for any additional dollars to come forward. No general fund dollars, no property tax dollars, none of that. This can all be contained within the ARPA program and the ARPA interest program. So I just wanted to share that with you, but we're going to be walking through over the next couple of weeks the strategy that we'd like to bring forward for you to consider as we kind of move through that, again, to close out the ARPA program by September 30th and still meet this funding requirement that the board has approved. Any questions on this slide? Absolutely.
Yes, so the ones that are driven by clients, which would be the vision care for school children,
Yes.
rental assistance, public health for infants, septic system repairs. Is there a path forward for how they will be able to have sufficient outreach to utilize the rest of their funding?
Yes, absolutely. So that is part of our strategy that we've been working on since probably we did the 90% spend assessment in March, just kind of worked through that. So anybody who's been on this watch list has made significant progression through that list.
Okay.
The only one that we're, again, struggling with is the South Cobb Health Complex, but do have a strategy to bring back for the board for consideration on that one. We do anticipate that everybody will hit that mark or be very close to that mark. And if there was any leeway in their spending plan to say, hey, we just simply cannot hit that mark, we've already brought those back for deobligation and reallocation to other participants who received 100% funding. So right now, we don't have any big red flags saying, hey, we don't think we're going to hit that mark based on the strategies that have been approved through our partners and Deloitte to kind of walk through that. The only one that we are very cautious about, and again, want to walk through that with the board, is going to be the health complex.
Okay. You talked about possible use of interest income.
Yes.
Have we utilized interest income prior to today? for any of
Absolutely.
the
So
funds?
we've brought several agenda items back in the past where we have allocated interest income to other programs within this project list, as well as county infrastructure projects. We've created a county infrastructure contingency, as well as we've utilized it for water projects, which were eligible as well under the ARPA program. So we have brought those back forward in the past, and those continue to be siphoned, well, not siphoned, allocated from the interest that is earned monthly into those buckets. And one of the things we want to do is look at how we could better utilize that to close out the ARPA program. So the last one I think we did was to say we were going to use ARPA interest to pay for Deloitte as an eligible expense. For our last closeout, I think Mr. Giese brought that back forward when we said we're doing the final contract with Deloitte to get us through closeout of ARPA. We were using interest dollars to do that. It is also eligible under the ARPA grant program.
Okay,
So
thank
again,
you.
shifting our focus on how we look at those and to maximize our grant dollars.
Do you know how much interest revenue is left over?
We have allocated all of to date because it does go automatically, but we have earned 19.6 million.
Okay.
So just shifting how we focus those dollars to make sure we're utilizing grant dollars first would be our recommendation. But again, want to walk through that methodology with you all.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner, sorry.
Go ahead.
So, the ones that are under 100% complete,
Yes. Hit that watermark. We're having weekly check-ins with them on spend. They actually have since the 90% spend, they have a monthly spend target that they have to hit. And we make sure that if they fall behind, we've already brought some of those items back for reallocation.
okay.
And
then
sorry, go ahead.
the
Sorry.
money that comes back, where are we as far as our departments, like DOT or water that were on the list that may have expended all theirs?
Yes.
How can we redirect?
That we want to walk through. So again, they're going to be bringing an agenda item for their board to consider to allocate some of their additional dollars to that project. And then we're looking at how we can better utilize interest money to make up that difference. So again, but to your point, at
But
the end.
does it require construction to begin by then?
It does not. Interest has no restrictions tied to it. So if you recall, actually, this project was part of the 22 SPLOST program. So as we begin to close this out, we will be shifting dollars to the 22 SPLOST program, which is where the project will actually take place. So as long as we're using interest dollars, we have an extended time frame. The only restrictions are on the ARPA grant dollars, which we're going to propose to better utilize those. Sorry.
Okay, Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Sorry, no.
No,
If you're still continuing, please
no,
finish.
I'm
before
good,
you
I'm
answer.
good.
You sure?
I just don't understand all these.
Okay.
Wait a minute, then let's provide
Yeah.
clarity. She's saying she doesn't understand
My
all
question
of
was
it.
gonna be
Let's,
clarifying.
can
So-
you help provide additional?
Absolutely. Let me try to walk it through this way. The $16 million that we have earned from interest from ARPA has no restrictions, no time frame tied to it. The only thing that has to be spent by September 30th is the grant
the
dollars.
projects. Okay.
Correct. So what we're going to do is what we're going to propose the board consider is shifting those grant dollars to eligible projects that have expenses that are eligible that have not been reimbursed for yet, and using interest dollars that we actually paid for those expenses for to this program. That way
Okay.
you're taking that off and you're saying, okay, so for example, I'm going to give you an example. If we have a water project that is eligible, water has paid for that project or interest has paid for that project, but we could use ARPA dollars to pay for that project, so that would free up the interest dollars, which could now go to the complex.
Right.
And has no restrictions, no time frame to it, and it actually helps us meet our spend requirements for the grant. Does that make sense?
Right, but they're still on the list, original
They are,
list.
and that's
They have
the
to be.
critical component. Everything that we're proposing has to be on the original list. We cannot add a new project. We can't say, hey, we'd like to do something that was not proposed. These have to be on the original project list. So you are absolutely correct, Commissioner.
Okay, so the interest, will all that go to Cobb Douglas Health?
No, not all 16 million. No, definitely not. We've actually spent that on other programs as well, so we're shooting for somewhere in the ballpark of some timeframe with the interest dollars. So yes, that is absolutely what we're asking. Are we saying today that we won't send $1 back of grant dollars? No, we're trying to work with our recipients to make sure that we maximize those grant dollars, but also free up interest dollars that can be used for this project.
Right, so we want to,
Materials for the homes. So that, we anticipate that seeing a big uptick in the next month. So we're feeling pretty good about that. The rental assistance one, we're continuing to work through and make sure we're accounting for all the invoices. So those are kind of the big two that we have out on this page. 75 is pretty good. We're moving forward in that direction as well for the vision care for schools, children.
But
we,
again, while you're working with them now,
yes.
if they know they can't complete them by September 30th, is that money coming back for us to approve to redistribute somewhere else and with 30 days, 60 days left?
If they can identify there's a big chunk of money or a chunk of money that they will not spend, we have already brought that forward for you. So this is the spend pattern that you have here. They have a approved spend projection per month to meet that target of 100% right now. So we're monitoring that every month as we move forward. So that's one of our big asks. So as we've had somebody come back and say, look, you're not hitting your mark, we've asked them to we've de-obligated funds and already reallocated that out. These are ones that are on the list that we feel that we can hit very close to the 100% spend, and it's going to come down to invoice timing, when is something delivered, something small of that nature. So we don't anticipate a large return of any of funds here. We do anticipate they hit that mark. And if they don't, for example, if one of these don't, that money will stay with Cobb County, and then we will send it back to Treasury and say, sorry, we could not spend this funds in time. But our goal is to spend the grant funds 100% or as close as possible, because we don't want to have funds left on the table that somebody could have otherwise utilized.
Right.
Right? So that has been our projection as we move forward.
Allen, then Commissioner Gamble.
one more follow-up for clarification. On the interest funds, do they have to be obligated to a specific project that was ARPA-related?
They do not.
Okay,
So-
so that's why I wanted to make sure we were
Correct.
clear on that, because
So the-
those can be used for wherever we see fit. Those are our now interest dollars that we can reallocate.
So
Elsewhere.
I will say the board has taken two steps of actions on that. They have allocated interest dollars for ARPA-eligible projects, absolutely have. They've also established a capital contingency that can be used for ARPA projects or non-ARPA projects. So we've taken two different approaches, and then we've also used ARPA dollars to pay for our contract for our consultant with Deloitte. So those are our pathways that we have taken action thus far.
I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
because it's been a little
It
confusing.
it is unrestricted money that can be used for any project that the board so choose.
Right, we would just have to bring that as an agenda item, and then we could allocate that money wherever
Absolutely,
we prioritize it.
absolutely be agenda.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gamble.
Okay, buddy, close your ears. It's
Buddy,
essentially,
Slush fund.
close them. No, it's a shell game. Because as Bill said, we've already allocated the funds.
Yeah.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring them back because they're unrestricted and
Yeah.
put this back towards that. So,
So
and
Commissioner.
I know Betty hates that word,
It-
so.
You are correct that we are simply choosing how we utilize funds. I mean, that is absolutely the case. But the catch is whatever we allocate to ARPA has to be ARPA eligible. So that is the only requirement. There's two requirements. Has to be ARPA eligible, it has to be spent by September 30th. That's what we have to live by. So as long as we meet those requirements, and that is something that we are triple checking with our friends at Deloitte, and be like, hey, this sounds good, but nobody wants to get in trouble, so let's make sure these are 100% eligible and that it can meet all their criteria, and that is our first step before we take any action. So we will not bring you a recommendation that would have anything that would create any concern there. So we have triple checked anything that we're going to bring you to make sure that it is ARPA eligible and that it is an easy transition, while still trying to meet the needs of the approved projects. Yeah.
Well, but that's why I was saying they have to be on the project list,
They
the
do.
original project list. But that's for these that are underspent, that haven't spent. But you're saying that the interest can be utilized anywhere.
Yes, you're correct, Commissioner. The grant
Okay,
program,
so-
the grant dollars can only be utilized for projects that were previously approved.
Mm-hmm.
The interest, we have taken a couple different approaches, so you're absolutely correct.
Okay. But for capital,
Yes, we
or
have,
one-time projects?
it can be used for any capital project you want, as long as the board approves that. So
But
it-
then we get
Doesn't have to be a
into
project.
sustainable
You're right.
in the budget.
It's should be a one-time expense.
Used for one time?
It needs to be one-time
You
spend.
can
One-time
use it for
expense.
Yeah,
one-time
for
spending.
capital.
It doesn't have to be for
project,
capital, it
one-time.
could be for initiative.
Any one-time
It doesn't
expense.
have to be a project, it can be something that's one-time expense.
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
Any other questions on the watch list? Because that's really the focus I wanted you to have today, is that of 99 projects that the board has allocated funds to, you have 10 that have made the watch list as we get to basically 2 months out from the closure date. And we have a strategy of these 10 of how we want to move forward. And the biggest one I want to be on your radar is the South Cobb Health Complex. And we have a strategy that we would like to bring to you for consideration of how we can still meet that obligation.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the key, is that as we saw this coming, we didn't want there to be any sense of panic that, hey, this is a project that we committed to that we can't hit that watermark.
Okay.
Yes, we can. We just want to walk through that strategy with you and make sure we better utilize, as Commissioner Allen said, we're going to use the grant funds first, interest earnings second, again, to meet all the approved projects that the board has already laid out.
Okay. Beyond this list, we have allocated additional funds to those who've already spent down their funds.
Absolutely.
How will we be monitoring that and being mindful that those that were allocated additional funding will also spend down their funding?
So they're part of our 99 projects that we've awarded to. Whether you got one award or you received an additional allocation based on de-obligation funds, those all fall into this bucket. So most of those that, well, no, I'll say this differently. All of those that received additional funds had already previously hit the 100% watermark. So theirs are going to fall into the 90 to 99% watermark on this graph here today. And again, they still have to submit a new spend plan when they get additional funds to say, this is my plan to spend these funds by the deadline, and this is what I'm going to do with those funds. The key part of that is still has to meet the original criteria of the project, the original scope that was submitted. Is just going to allow them to extend that scope or project a little bit longer than they had funding for. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. And
Any questions?
yes, that's it. Thank you. You beat me. Just again, reminder, September 30th, but that, I just wanted to see if you had any questions. But again, of $123 million you've spent, you've served over $1.1 million of individuals with that money. Okay?
Thank you. Appreciate you providing this update of where we are with this program.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That now takes us to our next presentation, which we'll hear from Jessica Gwynn, our Community Development Director. She will be providing information and an update regarding housing in Cobb County.
Good afternoon, Jessica Gwynn, Cobb County Community Development Director. Happy to be here with you all today to talk about a couple things, housing initiatives first, and then we're going to talk after that, of course, about data centers will be the next item. Stephen is handing out right now a copy of our presentation about housing. He's also handing
Thank you,
you
Stephen.
a white paper that he's put together on housing. And Stephen Gonzalez just joined us. You'll be hearing from him in a moment. He's our Planner 3 who's just joined our planning team at Community Development back in March, so a pretty recent addition. Stephen brings a lot of great experience, background working in the housing and redevelopment space, so he's working with us on those areas and has already jumped right in with Phil Westbrook and his team on the comprehensive plan. You guys have had the opportunity to come to some of our meetings, so appreciate seeing you all at those meetings. But in addition to the comprehensive planning efforts, we've been taking a look at this. And so what we wanted to do today, you see it says the housing toolbox, is just to provide sort of a 30,000-foot look at sort of a menu of things that we could consider. As you'll recall, the Board of Commissioners adopted the Cobb County Strategic Plan. There were several housing items that were in there. I'm not going to read through all these, but there were 3 key success indicators that were identified. So adequate quality and availability of housing types, increased attainable and quality housing options, and preventing and addressing homelessness. So today what we wanted to do is just kind of walk through some of the things that could be done. Some of the things that were even specifically called out in the strategic plan include tools like land banks, looking at our zoning policies and those sorts of things. So what I've asked Stephen to do is to take a look at some things, provide some options for the board to consider, some things that are sort of lower hanging fruit, things that could be done relatively low cost and a relatively short time frame. Some things that are a little bit longer play, some things that may require a little bit more investment, that may require additional time, and then some things that would even be further down the road. So we're not going to get very in-depth into any of it today. We're going to hit the high points, and then you've got this document. We'll be happy to sit down and talk with you all later on down the road if you'd like to go into a little bit more detail. Some of them are probably tools that you haven't even heard of before, so it's just very introductory. But we wanted to kind of get a feel from the board. What are the items that you'd like to give legs to and investigate a little bit further? So all that being said, I'm going to go ahead at this point and turn it over to Stephen to walk through some of those ideas, some of those tools in the toolbox, and then after that, we'll be happy to answer any questions and hear any feedback that you have initially. Great, Stephen.
Thank you, Jessica.
Hello. All
Hi,
right.
Stephen. It works.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I have control. All righty. So I would like to introduce what the planning team is calling the Development Toolbox. The purpose of the presentation is not to recommend specific housing policies or ask the board to adopt every tool presented today. The goal is just to provide the board a framework or a menu of options that can be considered over time as the housing needs and community priorities evolve. The key point is that there's no single policy that solves every housing challenge. Different communities use different tools based on their goals, market conditions, and available resources. To help organize these options, the team grouped the tools into 3 phases, as you see on the presentation. The first phase is quick wins. So these are tools that could potentially be explored and implemented within the next 2 years. They focus on removing barriers and improving processes to encourage private investment with limited public resources. The second phase is building a toolbox. These are tools that require more coordination, partnership, or resources. They give the county additional ways to support redevelopment when the private market alone may not achieve county goals. And the final phase is building the system. These are long-term strategies that combine multiple tools to support growth, redevelopment, and preservation in select areas. This slide provides another way of looking at the tools. So instead of organizing them by timeline, this matrix looks at 2 factors: how complex the tool is to implement and the potential impact it could have. Some tools are relatively straightforward and can have meaningful impacts, while others require more coordination, resources, and partnerships, but provide additional capabilities over time. The purpose of this matrix is to help prioritize these conversations. And it recognizes that the county does not need to pursue every tool at the same time. So looking at the matrix, in the upper left quadrant includes market-based tools. These focus on reducing barriers and encouraging private investment rather than relying on county resources. The lower right quadrant includes tools focused on building capacity and partnership, such as transfer of development rights and community land trusts. These require more planning and coordination, but they do provide the county with additional tools to implement future redevelopment. So now we're going to dive into some of these select policies and tools.
Stephen, can I just jump back and get some
Yes.
clarification on that prior matrix? Can you define or differentiate greatest potential impact and supporting impact?
Correct. So for the greatest potential impact, those we're looking at were when tackling some of the, implementing some of the tools to remove barriers or looking at some different process flows. It could speed up the process or help incentivize development. Well, rather not said incentivize, but kind of just encourage development. While for supporting impacts, it's kind of looking more at complementary tools that work with these other tools. So for one of them, it's fee waivers, which can be utilized with expedited permitting or density bonuses to encourage developers to complete
Okay.
county goals.
Thank you, appreciate that. You have another question, Commissioner Burrow?
Yes.
So how are these implemented or conflicting with the UDC, which we don't have yet? Or how do we know what's going to be different?
I'll address that really quickly. So, Commissioner, today we're talking really specifically about some tools that are available. If there are things that the board wants to pursue, we can incorporate those into the UDC. A lot of them are not even tools that are necessarily code. Not all of the answers are in legislation. So a lot of them are other policies and programs that the board could explore and direct staff to move forward with. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And then I'm happy, after we get through these, to talk a little bit about how those might be incorporated into our existing codes or how they might be incorporated into future UDC or other future codes.
Okay, are there any other questions? You can proceed.
So jumping into the first tool is accessory dwelling units. So this is the first set of tools that are quick wins or administrative improvements to encourage private investment. So an initial ADU code ordinance was brought forward to the BOC in 2024. The county does have some existing language, but this is a topic that we can revisit if the board decides. For those not familiar with ADUs, they are small secondary residences located on the same lot as a primary home. Common examples include garage apartments and also detached backyard cottages. Potential outcomes of this tool could include more housing choices for young adults and seniors. And as well, it allows homeowners additional flexibility or even supplemental income. Moving on to the second tool is density bonuses. So unlike regulatory mandates, density bonuses are voluntary incentives. The county will allow a developer to build just a little bit more than the zoning will normally permit. In exchange, the developer must provide a public benefit, and this is to the county's choosing. It could be attainable housing, it could be a park, it can even be transportation improvements. So implementing a density bonus program will require, one, establishing the criteria. So who can qualify for this program? Identify appropriate locations. Where does this program apply in the county? Defining what public benefits the county wants to encourage. Like previously mentioned, we can encourage parks, we can encourage transportation improvements, and lastly, creating a process to ensure long-term compliance. So most costs involve staff administration and program monitoring rather than direct county investment. And the advantage of this program is, once again, it encourages private investment while helping the county achieve its goal by directing growth to the appropriate locations. Now I'll move over to expedited permitting. So this tool does not reduce development standards nor building codes. Instead, it creates a faster and more predictable review process for projects that qualify for this program. So many communities have used this tool to encourage projects that support their priorities, such as building community facilities, creating attainable housing, and other public benefits. So similar to the density bonuses for this program, The program would involve establishing an eligibility criteria, once again, what projects qualify, create a streamlined review process, coordinate between county departments, and as well track permit timelines and program monitoring. The cost will primarily involve staff time, along with potential technology or workflow improvements. And the benefits include more predictable review timelines for developers, lower costs for developers by reducing permitting delays, and as well improved customer service. If there are no questions on that one, I will move over to land banks. So the next tool represents a transition from regulatory reforms into now strategic investments. So a land bank is designed to acquire, hold, and return underutilized properties to productive use. This often includes blighted, tax delinquent, foreclosed, and abandoned properties. But it is important to note that a land bank does not have eminent domain authority. Georgia law provides a framework for creating a land bank, and under the state law, a county must partner with at least one municipality, a governing board of 5 to 11 members must be established, and policies must be adopted for property acquisition, maintenance, and also disposition. Compared to previous tools, this requires greater investment, such as organizational startup, property acquisition funds, legal services, and as well ongoing administration. But the primary benefit is that it gives the county a way to reduce blight and support strategic redevelopment in areas where the private market may not invest in its own. We also don't have to start from scratch. Several neighboring counties, including Cherokee, Bartow, and Floyd, have already established land banks that we can learn from. And I'd also like to thank Cherokee County for welcoming our team and sharing their experience as we researched this tool. And the last policy that we'll be talking about today is transfer of development rights. This is often called TDR. It's a much more complex tool, but it's another market-based approach focusing on balancing growth and preservation. So it allows development rights to be transferred from areas that the county wants to preserve to areas which additional growth is appropriate. Property owners are compensated by selling their underused development rights to developers. Implementing a TDR program includes, first, identifying those preservation areas. Second, identify the receiving areas where additional development is appropriate, updating the zoning ordinances, and as well establishing a tracking system. Costs are largely administrative unless the county chooses to create a development rights bank. And all that bank does is to buy and hold credits until development is ready to commence. So the benefit of the TDR program is that it helps preserve important land while encouraging development in areas that can accommodate growth. And in closing, once again, this is intended to provide the board with a toolbox. Some of these initiatives could be considered in the near term, while others require additional capacity, partnerships, and resources before they can be implemented. With that, I will open up for any questions. Thank you.
Yes, just immediately, thank you for taking time to describe the various options that are available to the board for our consideration and for us looking at different factors for consideration. My only concern is that there are many more tools that you presented in the toolbox, and I'm only seeing a description for 4. And so I particularly had interest in some of these strategies that are listed in building the toolbox and in building the system that I would love to also see fleshed out.
Yes, ma'am. We can actually include those and provide those additional information and resources.
Okay, thank you. Even going back to quick wins, I was looking at some, particularly in that middle column, but what is a strategic zoning update? We know we've talked about reduced parking requirements, density bonuses. We know what reduced permitting fees are. Expedited permitting was explained, so were ADUs. But what are you considering to be strategic zoning updates?
Well, as we talk about strategic zoning updates, that is just looking at our current zoning codes that we have in place. And that's something that's a process happening through the UDC already. As we've done UDC presentations, we've talked about bringing back the RMR and RHR zoning districts to allow to be RM24 and RM60. So retooling those to support higher density in the regional activity centers, again, only with approval of a rezoning request by the Board of Commissioners. The UDC also contemplates a cottage court product that would be a small development with smaller homes centered around a courtyard, a central courtyard. So that's something that is also included as something that we could look at. Even thinking about things, and again, this is another thing, Stephen already mentioned the ADU code that we brought forward in 2024 and did not move forward. At the same time, as you'll recall, we brought forward an additional code amendment that would allow for one more additional unrelated adult and one more additional vehicle to be outside at the single-family properties. Those didn't move forward. And I did ask John, just for the board's reference, because you see a lot of those land use permit requests. If the board were to decide to explore that, if the board wanted to increase the number of unrelated adults, or even, we also talked at the time about maybe changing their definition of family, because at this point, under our current code, cousins, aunts, and uncles are not related. So even looking at that, if the board were to consider that, currently since 2023, as of the most recent LUPs that came to the Board of Commissioners in June, 76% of the requests for LUPs for additional adults or additional parking have been approved by the Board of Commissioners. We've also seen, and I'll let John correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a significant number whenever you look at the district by district breakdown. District 1 had 3 of 4 in that time approved, 2 of 3 in District 2 were approved in that time, 9 of 14 were approved in District 3 during that time, and 20 of 24 approved in District 4. But keep in mind, of course, now then, a significant chunk of the requests that we're hearing from District 4 are now in the city of Mableton. So we have seen that those LUP requests have tapered off. Just 2026 so far, there's been 3 that have been brought to the Board of Commissioners. So that said, again, those are the types of strategic zoning things that we can do that are kind of low-hanging fruit if that is the policy direction that the board would like to take.
Okay. Commissioner Brohl has a question.
And how many of those were a result of code enforcement complaints from neighbors or surrounding properties?
Right, I would expect, and Don probably has. Yeah, most of them, because as you know.
Exactly, that's why they come in for a LUP, because they've been cited by code enforcement, because somebody complained and they went out there. On the other things on here for the density bonuses, things like that, this all affects zoning.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's why I asked the question prior about how this conflicts or complements or whatever with UDC, because we have RSL, which gives a bonus for density if it's age restricted, 55 and older. We have OSC, which is open space communities that give a density bonus based on, no, what?
No, the OSC, the density bonus was removed in 2017.
But
It used to be there.
RSL
RSL is up to
does.
5 units, right, with the caveat that it does not impact or have precedence on then adjacent developments.
Right.
So,
But we do have some that are already give a bonus for density in the zoning codes. But I guess this would add more. And then we know what happened with ADUs a couple years ago. So I think some more research on that needs to be done, or more public outreach.
but again, today we're just really trying to hear from the board what are the things you'd like for us to research more and do some public outreach for, because we certainly don't want to spin our wheels if there's not the appetite for the board, from the board and exploring those things. As you'll recall, and of course, that was 2024, and we can be happy to provide. I know since that time, there's been a lot more discussion about housing and ADUs as a possible tool. Kennesaw has been working on ADU ordinance. Marietta already had one. So there are a number of places that in that time have adopted ADUs even by right, and that's not what we proposed back in 2024. What we proposed at the time was to allow them as a SLUP, so it would still come to the Board of Commissioners with a lot of guardrails that we proposed to put in place that would make it less attractive to use those as rental units or, to really truly let them be intended for multi-generational housing.
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, I appreciate the description of some of the tools. I'm looking for a description of all the tools, because I can't tell you what my preference is until I see clarity on these. And while some of these are quite creative, for instance, the transfer of development rights, some of these other things we've discussed, but we just didn't see fleshed out as the others. So I would appreciate having the full menu for us to consider. I do have a housing town hall meeting planned for September. I would love to have a similar presentation and at that time, see these tools shared more broadly. When I say more broadly, more in depth, so that we don't have just coverage of 4 of them, but of all of them, so that people know what are all the various options available to the board. And considering the conversation that we just had on strategic zoning updates, you just provided a list of what some of those considerations are. So perhaps providing a menu of what those low-hanging fruit options are under there would also be helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Just to add to that, and I hate to give a lot of work, but I think if we don't define these, then the public will define them themselves, and we'll have even more of a challenge. So I agree with the chairwoman of making sure that there's some type of guidance of what these mean for Cobb County. And the second piece is, like you did with the land bank, talking about Cherokee and other counties around us that are doing that, if for each of these, you can also reference where these have been successfully implemented in other areas. That gives us a place to start with research and kind of looking at what the success or lack thereof has been. So, sorry for more homework, but I think that'll
No,
be.
that's great
I just
feedback.
worry about looking at these as bullet points. There are people that'll be watching today that'll start getting anxious about the wording, and not having the definition to back it up is just a recipe for chaos. So it'll be helpful.
Commissioner Gambrill. Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, just adding on to your recipe for chaos, especially when the UDC has been touted that it is not changing our existing zoning. It's just an update. So to kind of couple this at the same time that you're trying to do the UDC, again, is going to cause the chaos to begin right there. But in addition to, giving us better definitions of what each of these means, there is a cost associated with each of these. So I would like to know if this cost is expected to be borne by the county, whether it's, we lose revenue because of reduced permitting fees, or if it's to the developer, because the first thing I thought of when you were explaining the transfer of development rights, I'm like, okay, somebody is going to have to pay a property owner to not develop their land, but then they're going to have to pay to develop the land they want to. Their development costs just doubled. So if it's about achieving affordable housing, how does this get us there when you're putting more burden on the developer to, transfer of development rights? So again, as Commissioner Allen said, I'd like to see where these have been used, and I want to see actual dollar amounts tied to those two.
So, Commissioner, to your point about the transfer of development rights, and that was one that's like definitely a much longer term play, because there's a lot of work that goes into that. But your district specifically, as we had the conversation about the Northwest area, and we talked about sewer capacity and those sorts of things, and the areas out there that want to be preserved, I just think there are a lot of areas in your district specifically that potentially could make some sense as sending areas. But yes, absolutely, we're happy to dig into that a little bit more, just planting the seed.
Well, and again, I mean, I know you're probably having my whole Northwest District cheer right now with those comments. But again, there's a cost to that.
Right.
And what is that cost and who bears that cost?
Yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you. And I think one of the things that we are trying to be mindful of as we look at this, and Stephen mentioned that, you know, a lot of these are market-based solutions, just recognizing that, you know, the resources that we have in Cobb for housing initiatives are different from what other places have available and are doing. So really trying to identify those tools that could be at a relatively low financial cost, at least to the county. So trying to be good stewards of the public dollars there. Well, thank you all for your feedback. We really appreciate it. And we will continue working on this and get you some more information, some more details, and look forward to having future conversations with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our final presentation will be an update to the board with respect to data centers, and I see our zoning manager also approaching for this presentation.
Yes, and John's going to talk about the data centers. He's done some good research there, looking to see, you know, what are some best practices in terms of addressing data centers. Of course, that being something, a use that we didn't have when our zoning code was adopted in 1972. We do have a moratorium, and I'll turn it over to John in just a second, but as you know, we do have the moratorium that the board adopted, which expires at the end of August. So we will be bringing forward a request to extend the moratorium at the first meeting of August, so that way we can incorporate whatever we do with data centers into code amendment. But today, John wanted to give you guys an overview of, you know, some of the best practices that he's seen and his recommendations for what we could include to better manage and address data centers if they were to come to unincorporated Cobb. Thanks, John.
Good afternoon, Board. For the record, my name is John Peterson. I'm the Zoning Division Manager. And I'm going to be giving y'all an update on the data centers. And, you know, there's been a lot of interest in these in the public in the last few months. So one thing we're going to answer is, what is a data center? You know, the current zoning code does not define what it is, so we can't tell you what it is. You know, if one were to come in, we would just put it under private utility. And right now, we're under a moratorium, so we don't have to do that, thank goodness. So we worked with a consultant, and we came up with a definition for what a data center is. And a data center is a facility containing one or more large-scale computer systems used for data storage and processing for off-site users. Typical supporting equipment includes backup batteries, power generators, and cooling units, and enhanced security features. And we had the consultant put this in probably near the end of 2024 is when we asked them to put it in. So the first time this showed up in the UDC documents was in March of 25, when it was introduced into the staff copy, and then the public copy, it came out in November 2025. So this definition is in there. It's clear. It captures what data centers are and what they do, and we have a permitted use for it. And with that, the consultant also gave us a chart with where data centers are, and they're only allowed in light industrial and heavy industrial with a special land use permit. So currently, they're allowed in light industrial or heavy industrial by a use by right. So this will help steer some of the data centers to where they're appropriate.
Sorry, John, can you state that again? You would be steered to what category?
So they're allowed in LI and HI with a special land use permit. So they're going to be steered to the industrial areas, hopefully away from residential, schools, daycares, and things like that.
Okay.
One of the things.
John, before you go on, one other question. What
ma'am.
does PD stand for? So it's LIHI and then there's PD.
PD is a zoning district that the consultant is recommending be put back in the code. We
Planned
had PD
development.
a long time ago, back in the 80s, as a planned development. So they're suggesting it be put back in the code. And all PDs are going to be zoned to a site plan with stipulations. So unless it's stated in the conditions that they're going to have a data center, then they can have one. If it's not stated, then they cannot have one.
John, on the definition, and maybe we'll get to this later, I struggle with the definition only because we have a lot of corporate citizens in Cobb County that may have one or more large-scale computers for outside use. That's their IT team. That we do. But I wouldn't consider what we have downstairs a data center. So I think this is a very broad, that could impact a lot of people, especially our larger corporate partners who have IT teams with multiple computers inside of their corporate offices.
I totally understand what you're saying, Commissioner Allen. You know, in our building, we have the server center for Cobb County, and out back, there's 8 AC units and a diesel generator.
Yeah.
So, you know, we can work on refining that down. It may be based on square footage or megawatts or things like that.
I think that'll be, because like I said, I just don't want people getting caught up in now they've got a data center when they just have an IT team. So, yeah.
Yes, Commissioner?
I would, my personal opinion, I think they should only be considered in HI, not LI.
And we'll take that under consideration, Commissioner Burrow. You know, there's a lot of discussion on where they should go. You know, in more rural parts of the state, they're putting them in agricultural zones because that's what they have, the land that's very cheap to build on. But we can talk about that
But
and
I'm
narrow it
talking about
down.
just for our code.
But there's very few areas in the Cobb County where it's actually zoned heavy industrial. I mean, there's a big area
Well-
on the south side of Chastain where the rock quarry is. There's a little bit on Canton Road, and there's a big blob down by Dobbins in Lockheed. And that's probably the only 3 locations where one would be able to go, based on this code.
Well,
And
then
we'll
if you're
we'll
going
definitely
to
take note of
allow
that.
an LI, it should be based on a smaller footprint or something that's not as intense as heavy industrial.
Yeah, and we could further define that, Commissioner Burrow, because I know the data center that's on hold right now in Marietta, it's actually in a commercial area. It used to be a Pace warehouse. So it's a 90,000 square foot building that they're putting servers in, probably about 80,000 square feet of the building. So we'll definitely take a look at that and find something more concrete to put into the code.
Yeah, and I think that's where, because when you hear people talking data centers, what they're not talking about what we have downstairs, they're talking about the size of a football field. And I don't think, I think we have to be real careful of how we lump everything in. And, you know, to what John is saying about being in these zones, there may be a situation where something is perfectly appropriate for LI. Because of the size, the footprint, the requirements, the power needs, the water needs, all of those are not the extremes of what we hear about in data centers. And I just want to make sure we're being very careful, not sending a signal to a lot of our corporate partners that you can't come operate here because your IT team can't have servers in the basement. And we've got to be really careful about that.
Okay, understood.
Gotcha. Moving into the presentation, the things we've heard from the public, you know, we've heard this in the news, on social media regarding the 2 data centers that are here in Marietta. You know, the public's concerned about power consumption, water consumption, noise, view shed, heat dissipation, and land use. And all those are valid concerns, Chair and Board. And, you know, with the code section we're proposing, I think we take care of most of those, if not all of those concerns, and help reduce the negative impacts to the neighbors. And as a result of all these 6 things, the board did put in place a moratorium back in February that's going to expire near the end of August. And I believe there's going to be an agenda item at the beginning of August to reinstate the moratorium or extend it for another 6 months until we get our code put in place. And, you know, this code section is probably going to come about in the fall time, probably September, October. You know, we were trying to wait to do all the zoning code amendments with the UDC, but that process has been kind of slow because it's so complicated. So for these critical code amendments, we're going to try to get them done in the fall time. All right. Moving on to the, and I gave the board a draft copy of what the staff's proposing, what the code should be for data centers. And it's, I believe it's a 14-point code section, and these are the 12 of the most important ones that are up on the slide right now. And Commissioner Allen, that picture is the server center behind our building. So that's kind of what they look like on a smaller scale. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at building design. You know, we're going to make sure that the building is painted an earth tone so it doesn't stand out. And as a result of it being a special land use permit, all the buildings, the design, the way it looks, has got to be approved by the Board of Commissioners as part of a special land use permit hearing. Number two, we're going to regulate the maximum floor area ratio. You know, this is a mathematical equation of building to square foot on a lot. So the 0.75 staff suggesting is the same FAR that they have for self-storage facilities, 0.75. And just by way of contrast, retail has a FAR of 0.25, office has a FAR of 0.5. So this is a little bit higher, but it's equal with self-storage facilities, which are probably going to be the same size scale buildings as far as lot goes. Next, we're going to regulate the minimum and maximum lot size. Staff is suggesting the minimum lot size be 5 acres, with the maximum lot size being 30 acres. You know, we really don't see a lot of opportunity for these big campus-type facilities they have out in South Georgia and East Georgia and West Georgia. You know, these are going to be smaller type facilities. All right, next one we're going to regulate is building height. Maximum building height is proposed to be 50 feet, which is the maximum height in HI anyway. And with the height, that's going to include anything else that's on the property, such as HVAC units on the roof, water towers, conveyor belts, or anything else. And that's also going to be subject to approval by the board as part of a special land use permit. Next item we're going to regulate is building setbacks. And this is the one that was the most interesting to look at. You know, we did look at the Georgia Tech site that had best practices and model codes and actual codes for data centers throughout the state. So the staff landed on suggesting for this first draft that the building setback be 300 feet from a residential church, park, school, daycare. And from any other non-residential use, the setback would be 50 feet off the property line for commercial uses or other industrial uses. You know, in that, we also have a requirement that the data centers would also be separated from residential uses that are not residential in nature, such as government facilities, I think I said churches, schools, and things like that. So the building setback right now is 300 feet for residential and 50 feet for non-residential. And of course, that's a beginning point, and we can go up or down from there depending on what the board wants us to do.
Just to kind of interject, because Commissioner Allen just said 500, but I'm kind of sitting here thinking if the minimum is 5 acres, you now take 300 or 500 feet, you don't have much left to build on. So.
But that's if it's adjacent to a residential district. And, you know, mostly it's going to be
Right.
in industrial
LI
areas.
and HI, that's not going to be.
But, you know, in our research, commissioners, you know, we saw setbacks as great as 1,000 feet. But those are for more of the rural areas that have these 100 acre, 200 acre plus campuses of data center buildings. So we thought 300 was a good starting point.
John, what are considerations in the application for the data center? Are they required to put in something about energy load, how much water they are anticipating and consuming?
And that's not in the draft yet for energy load. I'm still working through that, Madam Chair.
Okay.
You know, I did talk to one of the power companies, and the power usage for data centers, it varies greatly. There is no average. You know, the one that the city of Marietta is holding right now, I believe that one is 15 megawatts of power, which is not a lot, but it's still enough to power several thousand houses.
Yes, and this is where I think some complexity is entered into the development of code, because there are other partners that can help us, or should help us, understand what the broader impact and implication could be. Think of the water authority and how much water that they have and how much water that they're anticipating their customers using. is there a part of the application that goes to them for them to be able to approve or provide some recommendation based on their capacity?
Yeah, and actually, the very last item we're suggesting, number 14 in this draft code package, it does address the water infrastructure. So there are 5 things in there that they're going to do, and I'll cover those in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, great. And then, getting back to the energy usage, there are very real concerns broader than just the county about how it can impact all users when it comes to energy. And there's been articles from Georgia Power and other states about the impact that data centers can have on being able to provide energy to all users. And I don't know where Georgia Power is on this. Have they provided some type of report? Are they working with jurisdictions and how they can look at load to see how this is going to impact the system for all users?
I did talk to a representative from Greystone Power, and, she stated that they do not pass on the cost to their consumers, to the residential customers.
Okay.
The data centers pay for their own loads and rates.
Okay, so great, because I think that is fair. There's paying for it, but then there just is the capacity to provide, which can still ultimately impact users irrespective of how it's being paid for.
Right, and Chairwoman, just like we do whenever we're looking at zoning, we talk about, what's the water and sewer capacity. I think that's something that we also need to have, and it's something that a lot of the data center ordinances are including, is a requirement that just like you submit the letter that says that whether or not there's adequate water and sewer infrastructure and capacity, whether or not there's adequate electrical utility capacity. And it's really got to be something that's done on a very case-by-case basis. First of all, we've got a few different power providers here, but ultimately we all kind of know where it comes from. But also just thinking about, to Commissioner Allen's point, just the different scales and types of data centers that there are. There's not really a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
I think, and one of the things that we've seen is we've been working on the comprehensive plan, and I'll let Phil correct me if I'm wrong on the numbers, but I believe it's like 0.6% of the land in unincorporated Cobb is currently industrial zone. 0.6%. Okay, in the future land use. Before Mableton Incorporated, it was closer to like 6 or 7%. So we lost a significant portion of our industrial area when Mableton Incorporated. So all that being said, I think, and as John shared, we don't really have the opportunity here for the large scale data center farms, but we are more likely, I think, as Cobb County to be impacted by what's happening in the cities and with our neighbors in Paulding and Bartow and Cherokee. So I think that's something that, maybe there needs to be a better regional approach to.
Yeah, that's just a consideration. Then there's interesting, there's been some philosophical and then some perhaps market considerations where some data centers have even considered their own power generation. And then there is a monetization of that, because then they can sell that data, they could sell that power to then the residents nearby. And there's just some larger implications of it, which gets to my final point, that I know our zoning police power allows us to consider the health, safety, welfare, and morals of a decision. But the town hall meeting I had in District 2, I was just taken back because residents are looking for us to be the moral gatekeeper of something that they see possibly taking over how they exist in the workforce. And that's something that I never put on myself until I heard the weight in the voices of a couple of people that spoke about just this larger philosophical consideration of what data centers are doing. And even though that's not part of, again, something that we generally consider in factors of land use, our zoning does consider health, safety, welfare, and morals, and I've just never looked at it, data centers, in that way. I think perhaps we may look at some noxious uses in the community in that respect. That's a larger argument. I don't know how to direct you to do that, but it's something I've been researching on my own just to try to have better clarity on. There's a lot of discussion groups there's some debate even inside these AI organizations about the use of data and how it's being proliferated and what it can do. But I can't sit here and be immune to that, even though I'm just looking at land and what the resources are to create it.
Yeah, and just to address one of your comments, Madam Chair, the very first item in here, number one, states that all power for data centers comes from off-site sources. So
Okay.
they can't have on-site power generators or power stations.
Okay,
There's actually a data center that's under a stop work order now in Covington where they caught building their own private power station. And they
Okay.
can't do that because there's certain EPA and EPD rules that they have to follow as far as emissions. So that one's on stop right now.
okay, interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
So similar to the other conversation we just had about, because we don't define things well, we get the hysteria out there. So one of the things I think that would help is if we could somehow put in here not just what's allowable in a data center, but what's not allowed. Because most of these issues that people are bringing up are in these massive facilities we don't even have the available land, as we just talked about, in Cobb County to build something that require its own water system and its own power. District 2, I get this a lot because people talk about data centers and always, in my frame of not being a lazy leader, telling people, we already have people with infrastructure inside of District 2. I could look at all of the corporate logos as you drive through, and I can guarantee you all of them have an IT team with the data center. Now, because we're not defining it appropriately, I can say it's an IT data center. We here in the building have an IT data center. What we have to make sure people understand is we are not going to be, in my opinion, we should not be opening Cobb County up for facilities the size of a football field for data centers. That's not reasonable, I don't think, anywhere within the county. So as we do this, it's important not to just talk about what our criteria would be, but what's specifically not going to be allowed.
So Commissioner Allen, if I can.
I'm hearing the definition needs to be refined.
The definition is critical in this situation.
Okay. Commissioner Gamble?
But in listening to you, part of the definition could be just that, the data center is specific to that organization, not to the general public.
No, well,
Because-
but let me, so that's where we can get into trouble because Home Depot's data center is not for them. It's for their website, for people in the general public to go buy something, to go do. So it can't be confined just to, our data center is not just for Cobb County. It's for us to communicate out to the broader, this right now is being streamed because of the servers we have downstairs.
No,
So-
but it's on site. It's on their.
No,
I'm concerned about us conflating servers.
that's what
With
a
data
data center is.
But for their own use.
For us to be
No.
utilizing this terminology right now and saying we have a data center is quite inflammatory based on the public sensitivity to it. And I would want to hear from IT directly on the distinction between what is generally servers contained in a site and what is a data center, so that there is not mass hysteria that Cobb County has been hiding its own data centers, and we have all these commercial properties with data centers, and they've somehow,
I'm saying because we don't have a definition, those things, that's what I'm trying to get, that's my point. Is
Yeah.
right
And the
now,
way to do that may be
I don't want them to feel
limit.
hoodwinked by us in what we're doing.
No, the ones already here
yeah,
are grandfathered in, but when I think of a data center, I think of a freestanding, standalone building on however many acres that's like a hub for multiple servers throughout the area, like a grid would be for Georgia Power or something, to supply power or data centers freestanding, not in the basement of a corporation that is for their own use.
So I'm looking.
But I'm saying that's what I think of as a data center, is building, standalone building, just for storage and all, but it is going to be serving multiple companies, residents, whatever. But a Home Depot who has storage and a county who has a data center within their building that's already is for their use, even though their customers may be online ordering stuff, or we
Yes.
are communicating with residents and businesses in the county. That's not, to me,
The
considered a
definition,
data
if I may,
center.
the definition does state for off-site users. So Cobb County
Right.
is using its data center, if we want to call our servers data center, for its own use.
Yes.
So we're not selling our service. Like, I think of data centers as the cloud, like that cloud, that's where it sits.
Yeah.
It's a place.
But if it says data centers for off-site users, I mean, these corporations that have their stores just like we do, and like this picture right here, that's not, it's on their site. So if a company like a Home Depot or a big box store comes and applies for rezoning, and they're going to have a customer service and a in-house data center, are they going to be subject to this with the rezoning building a new building?
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Burrow. I think the way to address the board's concerns is to revise this and put in some guardrails with square footage and megawatts used for the site. And that way we could weed it out a lot better.
Correct. I'm just doing some cursory online searches, and what Commissioner Gambrell and our county attorney has shared is correct, looking at internal usage versus external, and what's the primary purpose of the building? Is the data center a supportive use of the other functions of that facility? That is more of a server. Is that building being built for the purpose of providing data and, service? Then that's distinct, because that's its sole purpose, that's its primary purpose. So just however that definition is
And I think we're all in
drafted,
agreement.
it's going to help to mitigate some of this other concern and noise about
Yeah.
where is a true data center in Cobb County.
And we'll work on revising that to clarify that it's for the big data centers.
Yeah, and I would say, I think we're in agreement, because my concern was when I read what he says, the definition of a data center, the working, it says a facility containing one or more large-scale computer systems.
I don't know where this,
Oh, right here.
okay, I'm looking at the
So,
draft
yeah.
ordinance.
So if you say a facility containing, that doesn't, it needs to be explicit, like Commissioner Burrow and Chairwoman said, of the primary use, not just a building containing a computer system. To me, that's extremely broad.
But also you have the off-site, which is,
Well,
if it's contained in the building and for that company or government center's use only, and
Yeah,
it's
but
on site. It
I,
says on site.
we just need to clean up that, because we have people who are not on site in this building that are using the systems. That's all I'm saying. I'm
The
not,
system
we're
is
agreeing.
on-site.
We're agreeing. What I'm saying is that we have to make sure we're clear, because a lot of people could get tangled up in this language if we're not explicit about the use of a primary function. This is not just a facility containing. It is a facility built with a primary function of housing computers. That is not what this definition says. That's just my concern.
And we'll take another look at that, Commissioner Allen.
Yeah, send it to legal.
So look, I think for one thing, thank you for helping us have some starting point for consideration. There is a moratorium that's coming up so that we can continue to have time to weigh all of these things. I appreciate the board's diligence. They're subject matter experts. There's other resources. I think that it's important to make sure that all of those resources are engaged so that we have a tight ordinance. And I think it's also helpful that Cobb County has very limited HI and LI space, so we can even craft a more tighter code that just really looks at what's realistic for Cobb County versus what could be in other areas. This is a start for us. Commissioner Burrow, yes.
Just one more thing. Can we have these presentations electronically?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and moving on with the presentation. The next item we're going to address is parking, and parking is one space per 2,000 square feet, which is similar to our warehouse district, so that's a pretty low number because there's not a lot of people in these facilities. Number 9, we're going to address noise abatement, and the staff proposing that the noise be limited to 65 decibels in the daytime between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. and 55 decibels at night. And just by way of reference, 65 decibels is the amount of noise that two people talking normally
Okay.
make when they're talking. So it's not that much. 'Cause, you know, I've read things online, I've seen things online about these data centers that they're humming, they're buzzing, the generators are going off at all times of the day. So this is going to limit that. Number 10, buffers. Staff's proposing that adjacent to residential, churches, schools, and daycares, and parks, that the buffer be 200 feet of a natural buffer, and adjacent to other uses, it'd be a 100-foot buffer. And we're going on here to state that detention ponds can't be in a buffer, and any utilities that cross the buffer have to be perpendicular, can't be parallel. And I think all the district commissioners have experienced this, where they agree to a zoning buffer, but the drainage easement is going parallel through the buffer. So this has to go as quickly as it can through the buffer. Number 11, site lighting. We're suggesting that the lights be limited to 20 feet in height, and that that the lights be set back 4 times the height adjacent to a residential use. So a 20-foot light would have to be set back 80 feet from the property line in a data center use. Additionally, the candle lights at the property line should be no more than 0.05 foot candles of power, which is the equivalent of a full moon out. You know, you can kind of see where you're going, but you can't read it or anything else. So it's pretty low. Number 12, fencing. Staff's proposing that there be an 8-foot fence around the property, and the fence has to be a decorative metal fence without anti-climbing devices such as, you know, razor wire, barbed wire, things like that, unless it's totally hidden from public view. 13 is going to be an unusual one for the board. We don't normally see this, but staff's proposing that when the data center is approved, that the developer also give the county a decommissioning bond. And that would ensure that once the data centers have run their life course, that there's enough money in a bond to tear it down and put it back to where it was
Okay.
before the data center.
We need that for gas stations too. We'll start here.
And gas stations are going to be one of the ones you see in October, Madam Chair. And lastly, the Chair has already touched on this. We're putting conditions in there regarding your water infrastructure. So item A is they're going to be required to do a study on the amount of water they're going to use to make sure there's enough infrastructure to provide that water. Item B, they're going to be required to do a wastewater treatment plan to make sure there's enough capacity in our lines to accept their wastewater. C, this is probably the most important one. The staff is recommending that all the cooling systems be closed loop. So that's kind of like the radiator in your car. It's a closed loop system. It gets hot, it cools down, it gets hot, it cools down. So that way there's not a lot of wastewater generated from the site. D, data centers are recommended to pay 100% of the infrastructure improvements. And this is something that we see with all of the developments. You know, when you build something, you're required to build the roads, decel lanes, water lines, sewer lines, et cetera. So we're just putting it in there so they know that if they have to extend a sewer line or a water line a quarter of a mile, it's on their dime to do that. And lastly, we're going to make them subject to the industrial pretreatment standards and permitting that our water system does under Chapter 122. So anything that might pollute needs to be declared, and they need to figure out how they're going to treat it before it goes into the sewer system. And That does it with my presentation, Madam Chair and Board. Do you have any questions? Or
I
any
had-
more questions?
There are more
I had
questions,
just
yes.
one about water, and I don't know if this is even legal, so I'll look Debbie too. But on the water usage, if someone puts on a permit how much water they're going to use, is there a way for us to just shut them off when they've metered that water for a period?
That would be a question for the Water System Director.
Okay.
I'm not sure about
Because I
that.
think that's been some of the concern nationally, is they'll say, oh, we're only going to use this amount of water, and then you look at their usage over time, and it's ridiculously more than what they
Yeah,
said
and
they
I've read a lot of
use.
things about the water usage, and there are definitely concerns, but we're blessed to have 2 sources of water in Cobb County. And a lot of the problems that I've seen have to do with well water, because they're draining the aquifers.
Well, we've got plenty of sources. We're also in a drought every year. So we don't know if we can, like right now. So we're close, yeah. So, but if that's just something to consider, if that's a possibility to
But the fact
restrict
that-
their usage.
But the fact that they're closed-loop systems will reduce it, and the one that's in hold on Marietta right now is a closed-loop system. Well, it's in here that they're allowed to do maintenance on it. So if they have to change it out or do something, there's a way to do that.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Can you talk about next steps with respect to the moratorium that's in place and what we can expect to see?
Yeah, so we'll bring forward another agenda item to the August meeting to extend the moratorium for another 6 months, or until the code is adopted, and then this will be included in your fall code amendment package.
Very good, thank you.
So that way, it'll be done, or, assuming that the board adopts what we bring forward, it would be complete prior to the expiration of the moratorium.
Thank you. And I'm looking at my calendar, and I can't find it immediately, but Representative Mary
August 6th.
Francis Williams, thank you. On Thursday, August 6th, there's going to be a data center town hall, which has some experts, I believe, within the field of noise. And expert actually has a Quiet Communities website, and they'll be presenting online on August 4th. And then there'll be 2 PhD experts presenting on August 6th at 6 p.m. at the Cobb County Civic Center, as there are some other considerations beyond the regular decibel rating that we have that people are considering. Yes, that may be helpful for us to be aware of. Yes. Very good. Thank you so much for helping to prepare this. I believe Commissioner Gamble has a parting question.
It's not really a question, but it's more of a statement. As we're going to start having these town halls and speaking with these residents, I have posed this question and not have gotten a response.
Okay.
But the data centers generate heat. The fans dispel the heat. How is it impacting the area around there, and what kind of temperature increases is it giving that other businesses, uses then have to address because it's hotter? And what impacts does it have on surrounding neighbors, besides an increased electric bill for more cooling? But how does the release of the heat impact then the surrounding area, temperature-wise, long-term? And then also what environmental impacts it has when we raise our heat?
Yeah, and I did look at that, Commissioner Gambrill, and I couldn't find an exact number, because in the one of the things that the citizens are concerned about is heat dissipation. So I could not find an exact number, but, when you tear down a forest, you put in buildings, parking lot, everything else, that's going to cause more heat. So we can get you an answer on what that number might be.
Well, and I guess have any studies been done with the existing data centers that have been put in that says, the temperature used to be this and now it's this? It's just a fun question, right?
Yeah, and we'll take a look at that, Commissioner Gambrill.
Are there any other comments? Commissioner Burrow?
Are we going to have requirements in there that they have to? Because I've heard they bring in their own water and recirculate it. And then you said something about they have to maintain that if it,
Well, for a closed loop
replace it or
system,
whatever.
for a closed loop system, they don't bring in water every day. It's like the radiator in your car.
Yeah.
Where the water's in there just all the time, and it recirculates and heats and cools. They are going to have to get some of their water from the water system to start the system up. But then after that, they shouldn't be using too much on a yearly basis.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, John, for your presentation. Thank you, Jessica and Stephen, for the presentation regarding housing. And thank you, Bill, for the presentation regarding our American Rescue Plan Act dollars. This meeting is adjourned. Look forward to seeing you back here at 7 p.m. for our Board of Commissioners regular meeting. Thank you.